Hi, guys, and welcome. Hi, Tina. Thank you for joining me. Awesome. Guys, so today we are going to chat about biomechanics, anatomy, lameness, soundness, classical dressage, training, how we're handling our horses in this industry. We have Tina Legno here with us today. I'm really excited to chat about this subject. It's something that I am really passionate about, something that I really love. When I first started learning some classical dressage training techniques, it opened a whole new world for me as a veterinary physiotherapist. It felt like I had found the missing puzzle piece. And it still very largely does today, even though I have started to incorporate more traditional physiotherapy techniques back into my practice again. So I'm really excited to chat to Tina about this topic. I want to invite all of you guys who are joining us live to join the conversation. Please feel free to ask questions. That's why we're here. Share your concerns, your questions, your frustrations, your observations, your comments. We're really here to chat with you. And we know that this topic it is so broad. There's so much for us to talk about. So join in and let us know what you guys are thinking. All right, Tina, thank you so much for joining me today. Will you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and your journey?
Well, I'm Tina Legno. I am the founder of Alivio Equestrian Academy. I started riding very early on as a younger girl, around the age of 6, and began very competitive competing in Pony Club, which was dressage, combined training, and show jumping. And so I come from a very competitive background as a youth. And throughout the years, I had, done a lot with my horses that I had and done a lot of that type of stuff. And throughout my lifetime, I don't know, when I was 8 years old, I said I wanted to be a horse trainer. So I kind of followed through with my dream and fortunately had a mother who backed me on that and a father. And so I continued to carry on and learn and ride with whoever I could and learn from whatever I could that was available to me, as far as, reputable people out in the industry. And yeah, I mean, I was very successful as a competitive rider, especially in the whole realm of it with the dressage and the show jumping and the combined training. Um, and when I was 18, I really took it very serious to have my career and started training more on a professional level and teaching. And what I loved was the ability to work with the horses and to help people, with the horses and stuff, and allow them to establish better relationships. But what I started to see in the competition world was a little more abuse. And from that standpoint, I kind of kept a very, I don't know, just watchful eye on things and made sure that I wasn't partaking in the abuse that was, winning in the show ring. And unfortunately, I kind of had to walk away. And that was the beginning of my classical journey, because I had found a woman who trained in Portugal under Mr. Oliveira. And that was my door opening for classical horsemanship or classical dressage. And then for me, it was the golden grail. So after that, there was no looking back. And my training shifted gears from, training competitively to training for soundness. And then that was that. And I couldn't ever, it's like, once you just can't go back and ignore. And that's just been my life since then. And I kind of it's been a long, hard road, because back in 1995, when you're doing work in hand, people are looking at you like you have horns growing out of your head, because no one even knew what in hand work was then, but I just kind of stayed, because, you get the results and the horses, and the horses don't lie.
Mm.
So that's a little bit about me. I mean, I basically have eat, sleep, sweat horses for the last God knows how many years. I just turned 50 and I have basically run farms and trained and taught and all of that
Mm.
since the day I stepped into the horse realm. So
Mm. I love that. I love that you said that, your training shifted to, training for soundness, because I think that's such a big thing that we don't actually realize, is like, how often is our training increasing or improving soundness and longevity versus the exact opposite? And walking away from that competitive industry, I completely get it. It's like, it's so hard to keep competing once you see how people get there. And I don't know. There's very few riders that I know that I work with that I feel they're intentionally being malicious towards their horses to win. They're not. They love their horses. They're blind to what they're doing and what their actions are causing, and they don't want to have the blinkers removed, right? They don't want to see those things, and so they don't. That makes it very hard to work with them as a professional. And I often wonder how you walk that line. How do you work with competing athletes, and stay sound as a professional, like mentally sound as a professional? Yeah. So do you work with any athletes now, or not really?
I mean, I do have a younger girl who wants to, she came to me. The horse was completely out of control, running off with her, and she had no brakes, no steering, nothing. And
Mm.
because it was every solution was pull.
Yeah.
Pull to slow down, pull to speed up, pull to turn, pull. And like, it's been an interesting journey because she started working with me about a year ago, and we've transformed the horse a lot. And now, of course, she wants to go back out there, and we still have a long ways to go. But I mean, it's the rewards to me are so much more beneficial because,
Mm.
and even still, the horse came to me a navicular, and he was diagnosed with kissing spine and all these things. But the only reason why these things come up is because if you don't allow the horse freedom to develop the top line muscles, you're constantly pressing down. So it's like everything is changed and inverted downward. So now you have no spring back. And once you lose that spring back, I mean, you're just riding around on a board, basically. So yes, I do have I have a couple people that do choose to compete. I even competed my stallion last year. I brought him out, and we actually, it was the first time since we had gone out, or since I had gone out since 2008. It was his first time out ever. And I mean, I'm talking, I got a breeding stallion, and it was 7. No, he just turned 8. And I was just going to kind of prove that I could go out in the competition world and be successful. And the funny thing is, it was Nuno Oliveira's birthday. So it was almost a tribute to him to be like, look, we can go out and compete and still not be abusive to our horses. Not that I want to continue to do that, but we ended up getting a first and a third. I mean, we scored in the 60s, which was huge for him to be out for the first time. But it's not my thing. I mean,
No.
yeah. But I did it to be like, look what we could do. And he got his little showcase, and, it was fun. But the thing about it, which I feel, is that if people were to be more educated and they understood more about the balance and the biomechanics, a lot of these issues that they're running into could be resolved in the show ring and in wherever. But I mean, I think it's the leaders of the industry are not educated. They're allowing the horses to be abused in the sake of winning. So, it's like, where do you begin with that? So, again, when I was younger, I was like, I went out and competed, and, just to show that we could do that. And you don't have to abuse your horse to get through a show ring or a cross country course or, you know, stadium course or anything like that. But the people, I think, are so, I don't know, it's a slippery slope, we'll say. And I feel that the lack of education and the lack of standards is the main issue, because you have all these bigwig trainers out there that create a following, and everyone thinks that they know best just because they have blue ribbons. But a ribbon doesn't mean anything to me. Sometimes it means to stay away from that person because they're not really thinking about the horse. They're thinking more about themselves. But I feel like, not like you were saying, not everybody is out there abusing their horses in the competition world. But I see a lot.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes I can't even watch. Like, it makes me want to just cry, you know?
Yeah, I hear you. Hi, Bridget. It's good to have you with us. Guys, if you're joining us live, welcome. It's so great to have you. Please share any comments or questions that you have. We're talking about biomechanics, anatomy, movement, lameness, and how it all links back to training, bringing in some classical dressage training. So join the conversation. It's great to have you guys with us. So let's talk a little bit about, you've kind of touched on standards, so I want to come back to that, but let's start with some of the lameness issues that are really caused by poor training and poor movement practices in our horses.
Okay. You want me to speak?
Yeah. Okay. So what else, like some of the most common lameness issues that you come across that you link back to that poor training?
Okay, so this is where it begins. Ready? All horses are born crooked.
Yeah.
No, they are.
Yes, no, I agree with you. Yep.
There's actually proof. I'm not going to say this yet because this is going to be part of my book, but there is an artist out there from many, 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 many years ago that drew a picture of a horse's front end. And the left fore is perpendicular and the right fore is on an angle. So when horses come out of the womb, they come out left fore first, and then the right fore comes out after, and the head is rested on the legs, which I fold out numerous horses. And I've actually, my last filly, I did an experiment to see when she was born, if I could change the biomechanics from very early on, like day 7. Okay. So the problem is that all horses, being that they come out that way, if we don't help fix that before we lead them, handle them, put tack on them, they will forever have an issue with the right fore being lower and the left fore being stiffer. So what that does is, in the training aspect or the riding world, you have the horses have a hard time making a circle to the left. Horses have a hard time picking up their right lead canter because the right side is actually lower. So then you find the right hind is always shorter than the left hind. So the right hind always comes up lame first, and then the left fore, because it's a diagonal crossing. So what I have done through the years is, through many, many years, I knew this prior. Well, I didn't really pay attention to the babies being born till not that long ago. Especially when I found the picture of the front end going like this, I was like, wow, that's pretty crazy. So all the while I've trained horses, I've always worked on restructuring the front end to get the front end to be perpendicular to the ground. And it's not only the front end, because you have the whole rest of the body of the horse. But if you do not realign or restructure the shoulder cavity, when you go to send the horse forward, you're sending it into an imbalanced front end. So it's very important to rebalance the front end before you go sending it forward and doing stuff. Now, this is where it gets complicated, because now you have people who don't really understand that, how they handle the horse from a baby, how they put the halters on, how they lead them, all this stuff starts. And what happens is the horses pull back, and then it makes the horse get stuck up in the pole behind the right ear. The eyes get pulled to the right, and now the horse is left side dominant. And then we lead the horses and we try to get them to curve around us to the left, and they can't because the whole right side is now stuck into itself. So when I train horses, a lot of it is readjusting that, whether they're 17 years old, a year old, 30 years old, you know, you're always trying to fix that for them to readjust the shoulder cavity. And depending on how long they've been ridden poorly or not corrected, or how poorly they've been ridden, then it takes longer to get that to level out because they've been going around this way for so long. So, you know, I think that a lot of the issues that horses are having are coming from birth that could be corrected. But when you get into the whole riding aspect of it, you have there are a lot of times that the left fore takes a while longer step than the right fore. You'll have the right rib cage is more retracted and the left rib cage is more stiff. And it's usually right hind, left fore, which is always kind of your two that the horse is lame. And then then it shows up in the right fore because then the horse is too much, you're lower on the right hand side. So it's like, I think that, God, I mean, I see it all the time. It's I go in and this is what I go to fix. Like I get this or then usually once you establish a somewhat solid front end, then you could send the horse more into it where you get the hind legs pushing off evenly. Because again, the right hind is always shorter than the left, period. So like I've talked to numerous vets and they're like, oh yeah, we just call it the right hind syndrome. And I'm like, well, I could fix it, you know, but no one looks to the trainers because unfortunately the trainers are out there making the horses worse because they don't understand it either. And then they're trying to train the horse to do certain things, but the horse is hitting a wall because the front end is stuck. So, you know, it's like, and for me, I don't want to get off tangent, but all behavioral issues stem from a balance related issue. If you have a horse who is acting out and has a behavioral issue, there's something going on balance wise that are creating it. Once you balance a horse out, they're pretty much drama free. And I mean, you can walk through my barn and all my horses, they don't spook, they don't act stupid. They, you know, they may jump around a little bit. I have a breeding stallion. You can't help testosterone. You know what I mean? But even when he jumps around, it's controlled and he's not, you know, he's not afraid of anything or acting like things are bothering him. So it becomes, I don't know, like if I could scream from the rooftops and just help people understand that more, it's such a simple thing that you have to pay attention to, but yet it's so lacking out there. Like no one's out there promoting this or teaching it. I mean, maybe they are, I have yet to find it, you know, and I think that, you know, if you don't restructure the shoulder cavity before you do anything with the horse, you're going to forever have some form of a problem arise.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
It's usually right hind.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you bring up the birth trauma and the idea of laterality or the concept of laterality. It's not really an idea, but there's so much in that, right? So birth trauma is something that I find very interesting. I think there's so much there we still need to unpack and understand and get into, because yes, it's very real. It's very much there. We have studies that show that a percentage of horses that are born with subluxations of the costovertebral joints or fractures of the rib. Are those relevant when they're 3 or 4 or 5 years old? No, because they heal so quickly. But what is relevant is that they're born with a fracture or a subluxation. And what does that mean? They're learning to walk, canter, turn, balance with a fracture, right?
Right.
That is going to affect their movement patterns. And I think that is something that we're not 100% on yet, right? Like there's something to the osteopaths and the physios that are saying, I want to work with your foals after they're born. I want to see them in the first year so that we can start straightening these things out and then bringing that into training. And again, if we're thinking, like, there's this whole conversation around laterality where we're saying, well, we're lateral people. We have a dominant side and a weak side. So what degree of laterality is normal and what degree of laterality is going to lead to lameness or unsoundness? So when do we have to start being concerned? And I think that's very interesting to think about. Yeah.
So as I was just reading one of the questions too with Liz, what she said. So interestingly enough, like throughout the years, I have birthed out 8 foals, and it's been very, you know, as you learn and you get older, you start to see patterns and things, and then, you know, having trained, God knows, I mean, I probably trained 1,000 horses, and you see the same pattern, it really gets to the point where it's like boring, you know what I mean? But it's not. It's just, it's the same common denominator in all horses. It's just, it presents itself a little different because you have conformation, you have the way the horse reacts and stuff, that, but it always boils down to the same thing. So what I did with my filly, who was just born, actually, she just turned 2 days ago. When she was born, it was funny because I looked at the mother while the filly was still in her, and you could see the way the baby was laying in her, to, you know, prior to coming out. She was on the left-hand side. She was bulging on the left, you know, so it's that whole thing. So I was like, well, and it's funny because this mare that carries her is more balanced. So if you have a mare that's not balanced and they get going and they're off balance and they have that right shoulder deviation down, the baby's going to get pressed more in that balance as they're being carried. So, I mean, this goes deep. So when she was born, I started, well, and she was a firecracker. Like, you couldn't touch her. Like, this was the first baby I had that was not interested in being touched at all. Like, normally they're like, cool. So that was a whole nother ball game, because teaching her how to allow me in her space and be handled. And I mean, she one time I stood behind I stood in front of her, and the mom was eating hay and the baby was behind me. I was kind of like in a triangle, and the hay, a piece of hay, touched her nose, the filly. She reared up and flipped up over behind me. Next thing, her legs are between my legs. And I just stood there because I was like, if I move, something's going to happen. But that's how hot this horse was. So anyways, so I went into going into teaching her how to stand perpendicular to the ground. Well, a lot of the resistance lies in the left rib cage, again, because the right fore is lower, which pushes the horse in more to the left. So when I could finally help her adjust the front end, I would address a little the rib cage and just move it over a little, because when the horse is, you know, you want it to be a pendulum swing. If you move it to the left, it should come back to the right. Well, no, right. So when I would move it left or move it over to the right, she struggled with it, and then it would come back more to the left. And again, it's like a swing. So, and with the front end being like this, I'm over exaggerating, but with the front end being like this, the whole horse is pushed more to the left, like a contact lens. You got the two concave and convex. So, you know, as you keep working the rib cage and you teach the horse how to balance out the ribs so that they spring the shoulders open, and then they find a place where their hind feet can come, all of that starts to go away. But what was fascinating to me was when I was playing with the rib cage, I mean, and I'm barely touching this horse because she was like, you know, you can't, they're babies and it's fun. Like, I love this stuff. So I would move it over, and then she would kind of get pissy and want to kick. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But it's because of the hips too. Like you were saying, the subluxation, there's something going on in the right SI joint because they come out of the womb stuck like this. So I would start to release it, and then she would get agitated a little bit with me, and I would wait it out, you know. And then one day I went in and I stood there and I was working on the rib cage on the left only, because I want to first get this to move over, because they're already like this. I want to move this over. And all of a sudden I came and I'm doing a little light work, and she's yawning, and I mean, all these things. And I was like, this is perfect. You know, this is my experiment, you know? So now this filly can run around, jump around, dance around, do whatever. And when she halts perpendicular to the ground, no matter what, and generally is standing perfectly square. Now, you have that, but it also is how we handle them. If you lead them and you pull on them, you create a lock behind the right pull. So now if you do that, your whole right side compression is going to be way worse as they grow up. So again, I know this stuff. So I'm working it out as a baby. And when I lead her and pay attention to all that, there's a triangle, which when we lead our horses, we should always be behind the eye, like 2 feet kind of behind the eye, and then lined up a little bit in front of the shoulder. Now, depending on the horse. So like here's the head and then here's the shoulder. And here we are, the apex of the triangle. When you teach the horse that, you teach the horse to come around you. The inside eye will then focus in on you. And this is the cool part. Like, I mean, I love this stuff. When you release the left shoulder, right shoulder that comes out on level, and you got the horse level, when the horse is standing level, when you find that spot on the inside and that inside eye looks at you, the whole right side of the horse lets go around you. Very subtle, because most people don't see it. So there's a connection with the eye that keeps the horse on a lateral plane. So when the head turns, the horse turns its head, staying perpendicular to the ground, and looks at you. When that happens, the whole right side releases, and now the horse can move from side to side freer because the right side isn't locked into the left. So I do a lot of that with all the horses. I start generally in a stall. I teach them how to come around me. I practice the stops and starts so they stand perpendicular, and some really have a hard time. Like I had a paint mare who would always stand with her hind legs together, you know, and twist it in her waist. So she was 12 and it handled really poorly. I mean, it was a lot of work, and it's still a lot of work, but you know, so there's so many different little modalities that you can use. And then, but once you break through that, the horses free themselves up, and then they naturally want to self-correct, which is why I love this work, because I learned, you know, when you guide them to a better place, they want to go there more readily. And then, you know, some of them will even use, like when you are working with a horse and they're struggling and the shoulders are unlevel, if you can get them to stand somewhat perpendicular, or when you're working them, because you want the front legs to stay in a straight line perpendicular, when they learn to drop their head, it actually releases the base of the neck and allows the horse to come over the top and lift the back. So, and then from there, the rib cage will spring open, and then your hind legs can deliver the horse up through. So there's so many little pieces that you can incorporate into it. And again, it's like, it's hard to write a book, because you can't be like, well, you have to do this and then you have to do that, because every horse is a little different, but the common denominator is the same. So, you know, I probably got off tangent.
No, I think you're starting to touch on like, what do we do and how do we fix it, which is great, because I want to bring in, so Liz has asked that question. Liz, it's great to have you with us. So what can we actually do to start to reset the birth trauma? We'll get into that in a second. Bridget, it's very cool that you're about to present a topic on the subject. I hope that we inspire you a little bit and give you some ideas. And please feel free to ask any questions. That's fantastic.
And then let me go to Liz quick. So it's the problem that all horses, there's a ladder, like we need to help the horses be even on both sides, and they're born with the right side lower. So if you have to almost start by letting the left side curve this way to open up the right side. Once you get the right side to open up more, and this is all through very subtle, soft stuff, you cannot force anything. Once you create that, then the right side expands and comes up and then levels out. Then when the horse goes straight or on a curve this way, the right side doesn't drop. A lot of times and this is in every horse, when you go right, a lot of times the right side drops. And when the right side drops, the left hind wings out. So you have to, when people feel like, oh, they want to pick up the right shoulder, so to speak, you need to push the left hind under, because it's a cross reference. And then, there's so much stuff. We could go on for days, and I could like pinpoint so many little things that it's like, I feel honored to be able to communicate with you about this, because I feel that a lot of people don't know these things. And to me, I've been studying it and studying it and studying it and studying it. And I've taken horses that have come to me that I had to wear my sunglasses to not have a facial expression because they were so lame and wondering if I could even fix them. And I have, by the grace of whatever it is, every horse that has come into my life, I have basically created to be sound. And I have not needed a lameness vet since 1996. And let me tell you what, I've had thousands of horses come through. But it's like, once you understand the common denominator, it like you start to understand the pieces. And it's like, I just feel, like I said, if I could get on the rooftops and tell everybody, but it's also a process to understand. You can't just be like, oh, do this, and then that works. So I'm quiet now.
Yeah, no, I mean that's exactly the experience that I had when I started learning. I signed up to the Straightness Training Academy, so it was all online learning. Nothing was actually guided. I was just following a program with one of my horses, but the horse that I was using to go through the program is one that I've never been able to ride. I bred him, and he's crazy. And we don't have the well, I mean, you know, he's one of those that, like you said,
I know, I have one.
out of balance. Like, he's physically and mentally out of balance.
Yeah.
And so the sweetest dude, he loves to be with me, he loves to spend time with me, but I'm not the greatest horsewoman or rider, and so I'm not going to get on a horse that is unbalanced mentally or physically.
Right.
And he changed with you know, in that year of us learning straightness training, which is essentially classical dressage. He changed and became balanced, capable, very sound in his mind, in his body. It was a completely different horse, and that it was like I said, it felt like I'd found the missing puzzle piece, which was fantastic. So Bridget and Liz are both asking if you run courses and if you teach this stuff to people.
Well, and how do you? And yes, I mean, I don't have. I was starting to put together a 7 steps to straightness. My issue is that I run a farm. I'm a single mom, and I have, I take care of 11 horses here, and it's like most of my time is in the field doing the things that I need to do with my clients and training the horses and all that. So I've been trying to put things together to do that. I would be more than willing to, easily we could do Zoom if people are interested. Like, they could totally reach out to me. My website is my name, basically. And we could put something together. Like, for me, it's like, I kind of gotten a little burnt out in the horse industry because I feel like I've been shouting from the rooftops for all these years and nobody listens. So I kind of like, the only people that I'm willing to give my information to are people who are really interested, because I don't want to waste my time anymore. Like, I've spent a lifetime on this. I know what I'm talking about. I've done so much, but it's like people only hear it if they want to hear it. And like, if you ladies are interested, I would be more than willing to do something. We could set something up. I feel that it's so important for the horse industry, but like I said, I've been shouting from the rooftops for all these years, and I just turned 50, and I'm just like, I'm tired. I like, put myself out there. I do all these things. I put these things out there, and then you just get tired of it because nobody bites, and you're just like, what is the matter with people? Like, why don't you see that this is the better way? And you can't force people. It's like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Yeah. But I would be more than willing to come up with something, honestly, because I feel the horses need it, but it's only those who want it.
Yeah. So I find with this kind of work, I don't know if it's the same for you, but there's a huge learning curve that you have to go through, and it's so radically different from what we're used to, which is ridden work and being under saddle and working with a bit in the mouth. And it's so different to work with a horse from the ground. Our bodies don't know it. It feels strange. The horses need to learn it. It feels strange that it's actually, so my biggest challenge has been, how on earth do I teach my clients to do these simple things? They're very simple. They're very doable, but they are not the easiest thing to learn. You do need to pay attention to what you're doing, and I still struggle to teach it, to like communicate effectively. How do you shift the weight backwards? How do you shift where the rib cage is? How do you open up the chest? And how do you do all of that very gently without actually forcing the horse or pushing or using high degrees of pressure? So maybe you could give us like a starting point. Where do you
in a stall?
start in a stall? Yeah,
start in a stall, because if you, as long as the people are safe, they feel safe with the horse. You don't want to put them in there. You know what I mean? There's a limit, but you start in a stall, and basically you have to, you know, I wish I had one in here, but I don't. I like to use my lunge. Oh, I do. How convenient.
I love that.
I just got some from Portugal. So
yeah,
I use a lunge cavesson. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have the ring on the middle of the nose. All right. So I generally, when I have horses that come to me, I will put them in this cavesson and I will connect to the nose. Okay. And so what this does is that when I was saying, I mean, again, there's so many things. This being here on the bridge of the nose will bring the horse's attention to the bridge of the nose. When you bring the horse's attention to the bridge of the nose, you then can have access to the inside eye, because now the horse is focusing down and in, and then the inside eye can look at you. But if the horse's head is twisted, so you have a twist in the horse's head, they can't truly look at you properly. So then you have some misalignment along the spine, whether it's in the pole or the right hip. Generally, it's usually right behind the right ear, and the right SI basically is generally what I find, which then throws everything off. So you start in a stall, and you can, if you don't have a cavesson, you could use a halter, but you want to clip the halter on the side. A lot of us, we've been taught to go underneath the chin, and what that does is it tips the horse's head. So if you're under here, you're putting pressure up behind the pole, which they're already lower on the right side. So if you pull down, it locks the horse down in on the right more, and then it retracts the whole right side. So a lot of horses have a hard time flexing properly to the left because the right side is so locked in. Again, how they lay in the womb, they come out of the womb like this. So I tell everyone, I have everyone start in the stall, usually with a cavesson or a halter on the side. And you teach the horse on the left, start on the left, because it's, and again, if the horse falls into you going left, you go to the right and you work it on the right, because you first have to create a dialogue in a small space. And then what you do is you know, I use a whip. I have a long dressage whip. I find it's like, that's an extension of my body language. So I teach the horses to pay attention to the end of the whip with their eye. So when I'm in the stall, it's like I'm the composer, so to speak. I have the horse in my hand, you know, or we'll say this way because they're going to the left. I hold the horse with my hand, and with the cavesson, if I bring the contact out, I'm elongating the horse's top line. I'm not pulling it to me. I'm always elongating it. And then so with my whip, I'm asking the horse to come forward. So it's a triangle. Again, back to the triangle. And with the whip, you don't want to bring the whip into the body of the horse or point the whip necessarily at the body. You want to bring your whip way out. So when you open your field of vision for the horses, they can focus easier than if you point directly at them. So you're always trying to create this. It's like a wider triangle. Left hand is out here guiding, right hand is down usually. You want your whip hand lower than your receiving. So it's like push, receive. So you play around with getting the horse to come around you in the stall. And then you, like, I'll bring my whip underneath the line. You know, I'm holding and I bring my whip under the line to bring it in front to stop the horse. So they learn to follow with the eyes. The whip is kind of guiding them. I don't use the whip on them. I just use the whip to guide. You got to understand your body language too. You get in front of the eye to stop the horse. You come behind the middle and then go this way to go. So there's little things like that. But if you're in a stall and you create this pattern where the horse is going around you, then what you do is once you can create motion, whether it's perfect, it's not going to be perfect. So you have to create motion before you can influence the body parts. So once you create motion, then you ask the horse to halt. And generally what I do is I'll ask the horse to halt when they're on a wall. And then you use your wall to gauge, is the horse parallel to the wall? And are they standing perpendicular? Yeah. And if they're not, then you may ask it to shift back a little bit, or you may ask it to come forward and go around again. So you're trying to understand. So when a horse stops and they stop with the left fore towards you and the right hind away from you, or however that may be, you have to put the horse back in a rectangular box. And that rectangular box is what's going to develop the horse's balance and create a more fluid, open chest, so to speak. So if you, and this is not easy because a lot of horses struggle with this. So again, the goal is perpendicular in the front and then basically parallel to the wall and then somewhat square. And then you use that, like a lot of horses, you'll halt and they'll rest their right hind leg. Well, when they rest the right hind leg, they're putting weight in the left shoulder and they're creating that curve now because the right side is getting lower. And then when that happens, the eyes go away from you. So then you say, no. You might actually push the hip over with your hand a little bit to kind of get the horse to readjust and stand square. Or you may ask it to go forward again and halt. Or you may ask it to back up a step to put it back on its haunches. These are different. Each horse is a little different. Some you want them to rock back. Others you want them to come forward. And so when you start to bring awareness to people and be like, okay, so when you bring the horse around on the circle and you ask it to halt in the stall, is it standing in a rectangular box? And then what are the front legs doing? Is one in front of the other? Is one like this? Are they together? Are they crisscrossed? You know what I mean? Like, so what you want to do is in order for us to help our horses, you have to help them understand what a correct base support is. And your base support is your feet, right? So you can't establish developing a top line if you have no baseline. And your baseline will then develop the core. Your core will then develop your top line. So if you stop a horse and you have no baseline, when you ask it to move forward, the wave of the horse's body is going to be going all over the place. But when you teach it to support itself with a solid base, your forward momentum is now capable to go forward without moving from side to side. Again, this is not easy, but I mean, this is the key element to it all. And then you bring it on the cross ties, same thing. How is it standing on the cross ties? Is it standing crooked? Is it in a box? And then you bring it out to the riding arena and you say, you start working on the lunge. But if you do the work in the stall, you've created a dialogue. Then you bring the horse out into the riding arena on a smaller circle and you do the same thing. You do a circle a couple times and then you ask it to halt. No drama. If it starts falling all over the place and acting crazy, you go back to the stall and you reestablish the balance. And then here's the other thing. Any pressure we put on the horse's nose puts pressure on the pole, puts pressure on the neck, puts pressure on the shoulders. So you're trying to teach the horse to come up and into the contact, into the bridge of the nose. So you've created a pushing up from the hind legs, coming up through the middle of the horse, out over the top. And then all of a sudden now it's like the horse can see through better eyes because now they're not retracting and resisting and getting all tight and tense and standing crooked and the whole body's sucking back behind you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what I would say. I mean, how many horses that and here's the funny thing. I have a 28-year-old, he'll be 28. And this one, he was a handful, different than yours, where like you line this horse up and it was like, holy crap, the horse is amazing. But when he knew he could get away from you. So I had to be very careful hunting because he would run off. And had I known this stuff, you know, back when he was a young one running off with me, I could have solved a lot of these problems. But no, I was taught push it forward, push it forward. So I was pushing him forward into a crooked front end, and then he just knew how he could get away from me. So even though he's still sound and I've obviously paid attention to these things, I could have resolved a lot of his issues early on, his behavioral stuff, because I could have done it in the stall and just said, this is what we need to do. You know what I mean? And if he started to be a goof about it, I would just take him back in the stall and work on it again, slow and quiet. And, so that I feel is for anyone, even if you ride, like the woman Liz with the thoroughbreds, you start with little stuff like that, and it helps the horses to feel comfortable. You connect with them. Nothing's dramatic, and you guide them. And yes, you go both ways. Eventually you start on the left and then you go to the right, and then, or sometimes you got to start on the right because they're so messed up on the left. You have no choice but to go to the right. So, and then you can get a gauge as a vet. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if I put this horse around me in the stall and I ask it to halt, how is it halting? And then if the front end is if your left fore is over here and your right fore is behind it, look at your hind legs. Then what's going to happen? Then usually the hind legs are closer and the left side is further apart. So you got to bring that back together. So you have 4 points, which then is your base support again, which I was saying. Then it goes up to the core and then it goes up to the top line. But, it's like the problem I feel is people don't want to take the time. But you have, it's like if your horse isn't sound and you got problems, you have all the time in the world, you're going to have to fix it. Because you can't take it out in the riding arena and do anything with it.
Yeah. So Liz is asking, can you just reorientate your left hand and your right hand? Because I think the camera might be reversed. And then are you on the right side to start to move left? Just reorientate her quickly.
Okay, so all right. So here again, I'm sure it is reversed. So if you're in the triangle, you got your horse's head and then you have the horse's hind end. Okay. So if you imagine yourself, you're the center point. So when you're in either way, basically, if I'm on the right side of the horse, even though, like I said, it's probably reverse. What I do is with my right hand or my left hand, whatever one that's on the inside, is holding the line. So when I hold the line, I'm always with my palm up. Okay. Because when I work with my palm up, I'm able to influence the horse through my whole arm. So the arm is connected. So I sit and I have my right arm and I'm guiding the horse through. So we're guiding the horse through. Then when I hold my whip, I should have brought a whip in. When I hold my whip in my left hand or right, whatever, it's inside outside. When I hold my whip in my left hand, the whip is actually resting in the palm of my hand. So these 2 fingers control where the whip goes. And obviously it's, so you can bring the whip under. And normally when I'm doing it, I have my hand down here. So it's always below or line up with my hip. And then my right hand is always a little higher. So this is the pushing power, so to speak. And this is your receiver. So you're pushing and then you're receiving with the right hand. So I always think this receive and then push. So when you're doing that, you're in kind of where the rib cage is. You want to think like your belly button is lined up with the horse's rib cage. Then it gets really cool because you can point your belly button behind the ribs and towards the hind legs. And just that position alone will push the horse up around you. And then sometimes you have to move a little back behind the rib cage to create forward. If the horse isn't moving forward, then you got to shift a little, like there's a little box, you move your body over again, because you're trying to teach the eye to focus in on you. You're the apex. But you're always trying to get the horse to stretch over the top into the cavesson so that they come over and you're not twisting anything. So as you're doing it, would you say not forward like leading? So facing.
Yeah, so you're facing the horse like you're lunging. Yes. Not forward like leaning. Correct. So this is the trick, right? Like these are simple things, but there are so many nuances, like how you are holding the cavesson, where you're holding the lead rope, how close are you to the clip, where is your body, which way are your hips pointing, where are you looking? Those things all matter, how you're holding the whip and like how you're twisting your arm, like you said. Is it straight? Is it relaxed? Is that energy flowing? Are you able to have that contact, not pulling, not pushing? Those are really, that's where it becomes difficult, right? Because those things don't come naturally. We have to learn them.
Right.
Someone has to teach them to us.
Yeah, one of the things we could do, actually, I mean, even for just you guys, I mean, I could so easily put together a YouTube video, you know what I mean? So that I can be like, this is what I'm talking about. This is what you need to do. And I think a little bit of it is if I have people to put it out there for, I'll do it. It's not that hard for me to go in the stall. And then like you come back and say, okay, well, I'm doing this with my horse, but blah, blah, blah. He's not moving. So I'm like, okay, well, then let's shift it. And then we'll move. You got to move a little left, right. Cause then, and it's really like it's really cool because when you imagine like you're the center, you have to divide yourself in two pieces. Okay. The left side is if you're getting the horse to go around to the right, your left side is covering the back portion of the horse. Your right side is covering the front portion of the horse. So if you're standing there and you're facing this way, you're telling the horse to back up. So you have to be able to open this up and even be able to turn your belly button towards the horse, but keep your shoulder from doing this but then sometimes you can do that to drive, so again, it depends on the horses and their needs. But yeah, there's so many little things. Like I just did work in the round pen the other day. I actually bought a round pen. I've been anti-round pen for all these years. And not that it was just because we were trained differently, like don't use a round pen and it needs to be in a square or whatever. And I went to Belgium and I've been studying with this guy in Belgium and he was using the round pen. And I'm like, well, this could make my life so much easier. Here I'm hanging and doing this and tweaking and playing with the horses. And I could just stay in the middle. Now that I understand the nuances of the body language, it's like, it's fun now for me. You know what I mean? But you could also go out in the round pen and you could be driving a horse around and you could be creating a lot more problems. So it's just understanding. And again, I grew up with horses. I've spent from when I was 6, you know what I mean? I understand body language and all of that. And it comes natural to me. But it's like, there's a lot of little things like, how you stand. When you're leading a horse, like if I'm leading a horse and I have my line in my left hand, that's my holding to the horse's head. I have my whip in my right hand. Now that way I'm going to hold my whip more like this and I'm going to bring it behind me. So when I'm standing there and I ask my horse to go forward, I bring my left shoulder back or my right shoulder back. I'm sorry, because the horse is on the right. If I bring my shoulder back and just the shoulder going back tells the horse to go forward. So as you start to pay attention to the nuances of your body language, and you train the horses to find their balance, then they can focus on you. Then the little things that you do have a meaning. And I think a lot of it is people, are constantly doing stuff and the horses just tune out because they are so receptive to being in the moment that they have no choice when you're constantly being busy, and it's like quiet yourself down and learn how to stay in your own center and then understanding like what both sides of your body is doing, which, a lot of people don't have the mental capacity to do that. But it's like, if you want to be around horses and you want good results, and you got to slow down and think about what it is you're doing, because everything you do is having a ripple effect on the horse.
We're so loud. We're so loud in our words and in our actions and in our bodies and in our energy. Like everything is loud. It makes it really hard for the horses to resonate with us. Yeah. So actually, thank you, because I didn't understand what Liz meant by orientating yourself left and right, because the position I already know the position, but there's the leading body position where the horse is next to you. And then you're holding it in the hand that's closest to the horse and the whip is away from the horse. And then there's the groundwork position where you're looking at the horse, but you're right at you're like Tina said, you're between the shoulder and you're basically behind the cheek on the neck. Right. And your hand is on the cavesson. You're holding them on the cavesson with your leading front forward hand. And then that extends to lunging where that distance just becomes greater. But that's hard. Because you have to be, the horse has to be able to so easily respond to your cues without you physically helping them and helping to rebalance them. So lunging is not so easy as we think it is. It's actually a really advanced thing for them. And then you can do groundwork from in front, right? Where you're moving backwards and you're in front of the horse. That's really helpful if they keep falling forward. And if you're you're going out into the arena and you're starting to do some natural work, then that's a really great position to start using. And then you have work in hand, and then you have long reining, and there's so many different body positions and ways that you're going to be able to work with the horse, starting from the foundation. And that's where it gets fun. Yeah.
Well, and again, yeah, and that's where it's like, learning to start somewhere, and then you go into another realm, and then you got to go back to that and fill in the gaps. But it's like, there's a certain way you walk when you lead, and then when you lunge. So when you're lunging, once you teach the horse that when you put pressure on the nose outward, when you're lunging it, the horse knows to follow the contact. You want the horse to follow the contact, not resist against the contact. And horse's natural way is to pull back and resist. So that's why when you start in the stall and you create that conversation with the horse, now they know when I do this, they come with me. They don't resist back against me. And sometimes you can't even touch the contact because some horses are so reactive. So first you have to be like, it's floating. You know what I mean? Until you can help and guide. And you have like defensive horses who, the minute you put any type of contact, they're like, nope. And then the whole body sucks back, and then you got your problems in the shoulder again, So it's a process, but it's such a beautiful thing, because once you start to kind of kink that the resistances that the horses have been born with, so to speak, and then learn by people handling them not in a good way, then all of a sudden the road starts to open up for them. And then they're like, oh, wow, this feels better. And then they start to self-correct. And then all of a sudden, they're using their brain instead of just not paying attention. And they think things through, and they're processing it. And they're like, well, this feels better than that, so I'm going to try this. And most horses will process enough to eventually go to the place where they feel better. They don't want to be bad. They don't want to be crooked. They don't want to be dangerous. It just happens. And the body gets all out of whack, and then they start ricocheting in their own body. And once you free it up for them, they're like, oh, wow, they look at life, through different eyes. And that's what I love. I mean, when you could take a horse that is so withdrawn, that doesn't even want to be around people, and you can bring it out, and it could start to think and process and be like, okay, I'm going to kind of trust you. And then I had one mare like that I sold to one of my clients down in Louisiana. It's like, you couldn't even touch the mare. You couldn't get near her, anything. I had to keep her alone with a halter on. I couldn't even catch her. You know what I mean? And now she's with one of my clients in Louisiana that's 70 years old, and she rides her in virtual lessons. I mean, it is like, sometimes I want to cry, because that horse would never have made it with anything. Thank God this client was looking for a horse at the time, because God knows where she would be. You know what I mean? And you can't save them all, but I try.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Awesome. Guys, thank you. Tina, thank you so much. That's been really interesting. I've completely overshot our time, but it's just been so great chatting with you. Liz, Bridget, everyone who's joined us, thank you for your questions. Thank you for joining the conversation. Yes, this is recorded, so if you missed part of it or you're missing part of it, Bridget, I'm sorry that I didn't answer you earlier. It is recorded and you can come back to this, so there's no problem with that. Tina, if you do put out some training, let us know so that we can share that with everyone. I think that would be really great. Yeah, guys, thank you so much.
If you ever want to do it again, and we want to, I'm totally up for this stuff, because I feel like it starts with one person who really wants to make a difference. You know what I mean? And then it's like that one, like you, it's, you're trying to make a difference, and then it kind of feeds its way out there. And, and it may not be a bazillion people, but it's like, here's the thing, the three, you and the two other women who were on here, it's like, at least they start to have an understanding. And all of a sudden, once you start to see, it starts to make sense. And then you're like, oh, wow, well, that's where that's coming from. And it's like, again, to me, I mean, I love the work. I did it for the horses. It's just getting the people is the hard part.
For sure. Agreed. All right, guys, have a great day.
Take care. Thank you.